Welcome to Game Theorem, where we have serious discussions about absurd entertainment. So, you know how Bowser has 7 children?
Well, actually, I'm the creator of the Mario franchise, and he doesn't have any of those children. He has no kids. He's a father of none.
But what? Okay. You know how Princess Peach always gets kidnapped by Bowser?
Oh, no. She's never kidnapped. She's just going off on vacation with him to go watch a Lakers tournament.
And, well, you know how Mario always goes to try to save her?
No, he's just bored. Mario is actually gay.
What?
Also, Peach is an alien from Mars. I'm the creator. You can't question this. Anything I say is canon.
Well, that's not right.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Kira.
And I was the bad guy. Again. That should just be like a running theme. Today we are talking about the infallible gods of games.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a cool title.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's a cool title for what we're going to talk about.
So, trigger warnings. I mean, nothing super mature, but we'll probably get into misogyny and stuff.
And also maybe death of certain characters.
And, there might be spoilers for some of the games we have to talk about.
But we will mention it before we talk about it, so don't worry about that.
Right. But I really wanted to talk about this. I mean, you and I talked about it a lot, Kira, off mic.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about this all the time.
Right.
Because it's something we really see in the gaming community that no one has a name for or recognizes this, actually.
That's why I wanted.
Weird.
Yeah, I came up with the hyperbolic infallible gods title.
Yeah, that's funny. I like it, honestly.
And we hope that by talking about this concept can at least make you more aware of it. And at least you'll be able to see it and recognize it for what it is. So this won't be one where we are like, be better people, although of course you can be critical and whatnot. But I think it's something that's just important to recognize when you see it and describe what this is, this particular issue. What is an infallible god of games? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to just be games, but this seems primarily a thing in video game or and with video game creators. It doesn't feel like it's applied as much to other mediums.
Yeah, I guess not as much, though. There are a couple series I feel have this kind of thing, but we can mention that.
Yeah, I don't by any stretch of definition think it's unique to video games.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I can't help but notice that I think it's a lot more prevalent there. And I think that's just because when it comes to like story and world building and everything, there's such a lower bar for video games. Mm-hmm. That's my personal theory.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
All right, but let's define what we're talking about. Kira, will you do the honors?
All right. So usually this is when a fan...
So we're going to like define what it is.
Yes. You asked me specifically to define it, so I'm defining what an infallible god of gaming is.
Okay, sorry.
All right. It usually is when a fan base's faith is for the author of a piece of fiction more than the fiction itself. Like, they'll believe the author more than anything that the actual fiction even says.
And this will relate to our Death of the Author podcast, where sometimes the author can say something that directly contradicts their own content, and the community will be more likely to believe the author as opposed to the content.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, which is ridiculous. Yeah, we have lots of examples of that. Do you want to do the next one?
The author's word itself is considered canon by the apparent majority of the fans.
We've talked about canonity before and how it's ridiculous.
Right. But most... this isn't ubiquitous amongst authors. Sure, some authors just are kind of anonymous, but for an infallible god, they are known for using their word as content, or at least they themselves or a large intersection of fans literally interpret it that way. This could be in the form of like actual spoken word interviews or like Twitter messages. Mm-hmm.
They often display reprehensible behavior that is quickly dismissed by those same fans.
Right. It's like a God complex in that there's pretty much not a single example where there isn't some type of reprehensible behavior.
Yeah, they'll do something that is awful, but
Gets
fans will forgive
excused.
them. Yeah, it's always excused because they get to do whatever they want, basically.
Yeah. At least this is what happens the majority of the time. Mm-hmm. And then also, an infallible God has overarching creative control of a piece of fiction. It's like the great man theory of history. This is not something you'll ever really hear talked about in games that had a lot of creative input from multiple people. This is usually something that only happens when there's one guy in control. Mm-hmm. And I say guy because you're going to see that this is... Well, here, you say the next one.
Almost always Caucasian or Japanese men.
Yes. Caucasian because, I mean, of course, colonialism. Still experiencing that.
Yep.
And Japanese because the Japanese market is just so integral to the game industry.
Mm-hmm. And you're next, actually.
Also, these infallible gods are almost always within the medium of video games, like we mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. It can happen with other mediums, but it's more rare.
So this is those are like our bullet points for this definition of this kind of trope that we've come up with. Mm-hmm. So we have a whole bunch of examples we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
And I think I'll go first and talk about Mario, like we mentioned in our skit.
Oh, yeah, you definitely know more about Mario, so I'm going to trust you on that one.
Yeah, and we've done deep dives on Mario before, and this is something I have mentioned in The Death of the Author. There's a little bit of overlap here because of the whole idea of an author defining what makes their art. Because when people are against Death of the Author, they are usually doing it for reasons of like problematic authors, like ones that commit offenses and whatnot. That's not what we're talking about today. Mm-hmm. We're just talking about the ability of the author to override their own work without producing more work.
Yeah.
And that brings us to Shigeru Miyamoto, which you could probably call the original infallible god of games.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because he's probably the most famous game designer in history.
Yeah.
Like, did you know he actually has to have security detail in Japan whenever he does public appearances?
Oh, really? He does?
He's that famous.
Wow. Especially in Japan, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, not as many people in America probably know him, but, the gamer culture in Japan is just huge.
Right. He also has like a personal translator whenever he's in America or English-speaking countries. Because of course, right? Anyway, so he was originally a programmer. He made Donkey Kong. He founded the Mario franchise. He rose within Nintendo. And now he is on the executive board of the company of Nintendo. In fact, they had to make a special position just for him because they weren't exactly where to put him. They just knew they wanted him.
That's funny. I didn't know that.
Do you know what his official occupation is?
What?
Creative fellow.
What?
Yes. Because the board of executives is mostly, managers and money people, right? Mm-hmm. So he's not the creative director. He's even higher than that. He's creative fellow.
Wow. That's funny, I guess.
Yeah. Sure. Nintendo's also been really criticized for the fact that their entire board is just Japanese men.
Yeah. Well, Nintendo
You're
since
thinking,
that's a board of the company, it goes across all Nintendos, even Nintendo of America?
No, because Nintendo of America's executive CEO is Reggie Fils-Aimé, who is, I think, Filipino.
Actually, I don't know. Didn't you hear that the new man who with the last name Bowser is actually took over that position?
Then what happened to Reggie?
I don't know.
Okay, you must be thinking of a different position.
No, I'm not thinking of a different position. There were internet memes to high hell about this. There were lots of internet memes about this because his last name is Bowser and he was becoming leader of
I know
Nintendo
the person
of
exists,
America.
but you're saying that he replaced Reggie, and Reggie's kind of a big deal.
Well,
Honestly, Reggie's not on this list. I don't have a problem with Reggie. Reggie's cool. Miyamoto, he's the one I have an issue with.
well, yeah, of course.
And the reason I have an issue with Miyamoto is because he's become so popular that people will ask him his opinions on things, particularly concerning Nintendo franchises, particularly his Nintendo franchise, Mario. And the internet community, at least within the American English-speaking audience, I can't exactly speak for the Japanese one, because, I don't speak Japanese. But they just interpret everything he says as law. Like, this affects the actual Mario wiki.
Yeah.
And the best example of that is that in one interview, they asked about Bowser's children, and Miyamoto said that the Koopalings are not Bowser's children anymore.
That's ridiculous.
Even though they were introduced in Super Mario Bros. 3 as Bowser's children, he conquered the world and gave each land to one of his 7 children, and then Mario goes and defeats them one by one.
Mm-hmm.
And now that they have Bowser Jr., they just didn't talk about the Koopalings for a while. But most people were like, okay, you got a younger 8th one now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they brought the Koopalings back in the modern games, and they're actually appearing regularly now.
Yeah.
But now they don't want to call them children. They've made no mention of it in the games, and it's like, okay, fine, it's ambiguous, whatever. But now Miyamoto just claims, oh yeah, they're not his children. Then what are they?
Yeah.
They literally look like younger Bowsers, just with different hairstyles.
Yeah, that's just wrong.
Exactly, and it's contradicting your own source material.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I get Super Mario Bros. 3 wasn't the most narratively driven game, but I'm really not going to buy that unless you specifically make a future game where it specifically makes them not his children. The fact that you don't even want to put that in your content means I can't. You want me to just trust your word? I don't care who you are, Miyamoto. I don't care that you're this big deal. It doesn't change your work.
It doesn't change the Mario franchise. Like the existing games is what I mean. Also, do you remember that Switch News thing that came up about Toad and whether his cap was a hat or not? I
loathe that so much.
I think he said it was a hat. Oh, wait, no, he said it wasn't, right?
I forgot his exact answer, to be honest, because I honestly don't really care.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would have researched it if I known you were going to bring it up, because I don't remember what his answer was.
Well, I just brought it up because I remembered that when you were talking about him speaking on the Mario franchise.
I might have legitimately just not looked at the answer because of how much I loathe the idea of him answering that.
I told you that there was a Switch News thing answering that, and you were just like,
For those of you who don't know, there's this online debate that's re-emerged in the past few years, even though it's been around since the 90s, of is Toad's cap removable? Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
No, it definitely is not. I don't care what Miyamoto says. Okay?
Then I'm going to say that he said it was a hat, just because I think he probably contradicted you.
Well, I don't care. Because, first of all, he's a mushroom person. If you have a mushroom and you remove the cap, what are you doing to it? Killing it. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, that's true.
People have talked about him not having ears and whatnot. He's not a human. Okay? Mm-hmm. It makes as much sense to talk about how Toad has ears as much as it does Patrick the Starfish from SpongeBob having ears.
He had a nose for one episode.
That was weird.
You remember that?
But with Toad, for example, people are like, oh, what's going on in there? His brain, probably, if he has one and not some fungal equivalent. Yeah. Honestly, Toad's an idiot. Maybe there isn't a brain in there.
Yeah. I was about to say something to that effect.
And people talk about oh, but doesn't it change hat colors? How does that happen? Oh, easy. It doesn't.
It's just a different Toad.
Yes, yeah. There are many of them. You find so many of them.
And they all have different color heads.
Exactly.
Well, some of them have the same color, but there's a variety of different colored heads for Toads.
And it's possible that just like how different characters dress up differently, that they can just paint their spots or whatever.
I guess, yeah.
But again, you're right. Because, there was one of the Mario platforming games where you literally could play as Blue Toad or Yellow Toad.
Oh, yeah.
And that just proves that there's multiple ones.
Wasn't that was really dumb, though, because they didn't do any of the princesses in that game because of that.
Yeah, it was one of those all-male games.
Yeah.
They would only add Peach back in later. Uh-huh. Okay, so that's Mario, right?
Yep.
Now, so that ticks off several of our boxes. Now, Miyamoto hasn't done anything that egregious, aside from just being very, oh, wait, no, it's coming back to me. Oh, yeah.
What?
I was going to say that they have a very male-dominated and homogenous board of directors and company, which is bad, right? Mm-hmm. But also, Miyamoto claimed that video games were not art.
What?
So this is one of the cases of the creator of a piece of work denouncing their own work and saying it's not worth as much as people say it is.
That is ridiculous.
Which to me is the biggest contradiction when it comes to the fans that believe everything they say. What do you do when your creator's telling you to not care as much?
Yeah.
But obviously, we've talked about how we think that's fundamentally incorrect.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to move on to the next author. I wanted to jump down on this list a bit, if that's all right.
Oh, really?
I thought it'd be good to talk about Call of Duty Zombies next.
Okay, sure.
Now, Call of Duty Zombies is led by a guy named Jason Blundell, who's the second person on this list. Mm-hmm. All right? Now, Call of Duty Zombies, I've had a rough history with it, but I think a fair amount of our audience enjoys that game.
Yeah. You know that for a fact.
Right. And they idolize this guy. Anything he says is essentially considered fact. Because the story is so loose and interpretive and is essentially made up every few months and they have no idea where they're going more than a few months at a time. They ask him, like, can you help us string this together? And he'll say something even if it's not supported by the actual in-game evidence.
Wow.
I think because they don't know where the story's going so much, he could say something in an interview, and then a few months down the line, they effectively changed their minds, or rather, they just didn't know where they were going with it. Mm-hmm. There was this long-running theory within the Call of Duty Zombies community for a very long time that there was some master plan, and they knew all this all along. And
that's funny.
there have been several times throughout the series' history that those dreams were crushed when
Because
something
they don't
bad
plan
happened,
anything
and
out.
it was very clear that they didn't plan it out.
Yeah.
Not to mention when you literally do the whole multiverse thing and you literally start rewriting your own stories, and you have Black Ops 3 claiming that it's the end of the storyline, and then you just bring it back in Black Ops 4. Mm-hmm. Like we talked about in our Call of Duty episode.
Yes, which you were very upset about.
Yeah, so go see our Call of Duty Zombies episode if you want to learn more about that.
Oh, yeah, we go more into detail about that.
Yes, but I did want to point out something I didn't mention in that episode that I really should have.
Yeah,
because
what?
I honestly didn't notice at the time. But it occurred to me one day. I had mentioned that the playable characters were somewhat justifiable because there were no women, but they were representing World War II soldiers. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And I said they at least did have some diversity by having Takeo, a Japanese soldier, who being their only non-Caucasian player character. Uh-huh. Very low bar, right? But I was trying to give them some credit.
Of course.
I looked it up because I started to get a suspicion in the back of my mind. And now is a really good time for me to bring it up. Mm-hmm. It's called brown face, right? Mm-hmm. Is that the term?
For Asian people, it's called yellow face.
Okay. My bad. I'm sorry.
Usually.
They did the dressing up as another race. Takeo's voice actor is a Caucasian man.
What?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes. I had no idea, and I've played this game for years. This game was a staple of my childhood, or at least my teenagehood. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I can't believe that. This entire time, I thought like, oh, well, at least they hired a Japanese man to do it. Now, you might listen to it and be like, wow, Kyle, how could you think this was real? This is so stereotypical, racist, and offensive. I'd like to remind you, I grew up in the American South. I was raised to believe that's what Japanese people sounded like. In fact, it wasn't even really that long after we did our Call of Duty Zombies episode when I was like, let's go back and listen to these characters, what they sound like. And I know something was off with Takeo because I've grown more as a person since the last time I had to deal with that franchise.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't know that it was a Caucasian
and they
voice
use
actor.
the same actors to this day.
Really?
That man, I don't remember his name, and I don't want to name drop him if I did know. Mm-hmm. That man has been playing a Japanese man for over 10 years.
Wow.
Anyway, let's get back to the main story. I'm sorry I went sidetracked. But yeah, Jason Blundell is problematic, and so is Takeo's voice actor. Mm-hmm. In fact, I can't look at the series the same after that.
Yeah, wow, that's just awful.
Because, like, he's a main character that appears in almost the entire series.
Yeah, exactly.
Ugh. Like, I mean, with Richtofen, it's like you knew he was a Nazi. You knew he was problematic. He was the bad guy. Mm-hmm. Until they made him a World War I German. Whatever, it's complicated. Go back and listen to that episode. Unless you don't want to. Okay, next, you want to mention the next one on the list, Kira?
Kodaka.
Kodaka.
Freaking Kodaka.
All right, so this guy is the creator of the Danganronpa and Zero Escape franchises. His name is Kazutaka Kodaka. Mm-hmm. He's a Japanese man.
He's very problematic.
From Spike Chunsoft.
Yeah.
And we do have a series ongoing still for the Danganronpa series. Mm-hmm. It's a great video game series, anime series.
It has a really great story.
Manga. You should definitely check out our Danganronpa episode about that. Mm-hmm. And we have to give you a heads up right now. We will be spoiling Danganronpa. We have to be able to talk about this.
Yes.
So if you're okay with that, consider it a foretelling of future episodes on that Danganronpa series.
Can I talk about this?
Sure. I just want to mention that this is the infallible god of the Danganronpa and Zero Escape franchise.
I know.
Oh, you know what? One thing we maybe should have put in our definitions is most of these gods have very humble origins.
Yeah, you're right.
In fact, it's usually their first work. That's their best work. You know, Donkey Kong redefined video games. Mm-hmm. The early Call of Duty zombie games are usually seen as the best ones. And the first Danganronpa is often considered the best one. Although I prefer the second one. But still, everyone considers Danganronpa V3 the worst one. I mean, not...
For various reasons.
Yes. So yeah, go ahead and say your piece about it.
All right, so Danganronpa starts out as a pretty decent story, being like not that misogynistic or not that bad at the beginning.
The gender ratios tend to be pretty even in the first few games.
Yeah, exactly. They're pretty dang even.
Although they are pretty whitewashed or Japanese washed.
It feels like kind of like anime washed.
Okay, yes, but either way, that's bad. You can still have diversity.
Yeah, but I mean, you can kind of understand it because the whole thing is supposed to take place in a Japanese school.
And they did still include Pacific Islanders every now and then.
Yeah, they included people from other places occasionally. Sonia was a foreigner, too.
She was Caucasian, though.
Yeah. So
We're going for melanin here. Diversity usually includes melanin. In fact, you don't have melanin, you're probably not doing diversity right.
Yeah. Anyway, so the first two games, pretty good story, pretty even gender ratio. And then V3, when it is pretty clear that Kodaka has complete and utter creative control by now. In V3, you start off playing as a female protagonist.
Oh, wait, before you get into that, can I do some other, can I drop some other stuff down?
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to mention that specifically, the earlier Danganronpa games were very fun to play, right? But later, when Danganronpa V3 comes out, I hear so many people talking about Kodaka. Like, when we played it, we noticed the story was worse. There were narrative choices that seemed very left field. Characters that you were supposed to feel like, characters that were written as if you're supposed to hate them, but you don't, right? Around the same time, the community's talking about Kodaka all over the place. And that really baffled me because I had watched and played the Danganronpa series all the way up to this point. Every game, every anime, right? And not once did I ever even stop to think who was behind it besides the company Spike Chunsoft. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't really watching the credits. I had no idea who Kodaka was until other people started talking about him all the time with the release of V3. That's when I noticed this. That's when I first thought of the idea of infallible gods. I'm like, wait, this isn't just Miyamoto or zombies. There's something more to this. This is common.
Yeah, exactly.
And specifically, I think what it is the first Danganronpa games, Kodaka worked on a team, right? Mm-hmm. After a certain point, his notoriety grew to where he had full creative control. Mm-hmm. And by the time V3 comes out, he uses that. And the game is much worse off for it because he turns out to be a biased, bigoted man with a god complex.
He's also very misogynistic.
Yes. And that's where we get into your example, the most egregious thing about V3.
Can I go?
Okay, but talk about the protagonist and how progressive it was.
Okay, so all the advertising for this game made you think that this character, female character, was the protagonist and that you'd be playing as her. So you start the game off and you're playing as her, and then she gets killed off at the end of the first trial. And you switch to a more average Danganronpa protagonist that you end up playing every time, a freaking
young generic male character.
Yeah, a young generic male character that's like, oh, I believe in friendship and crap like that.
Right.
But
so it's obvious what they thought they were, what he thought he was doing, Kodaka.
Yeah,
right?
He thought it would be a great twist, but it just comes off as so misogynistic. The way she was executed. And
also, the most brutal execution in the entire series.
You think so?
Yes. You know why?
Why?
It used a real execution method. All previous executions in previous games were fantastic. Like, one character ends up going into a motorcycle rolling cage of death. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there was the one character that died in a car accident, but that was kind of the point. She thought she was more than she was, and she died an average death. Mm-hmm. But then other characters, they get sent into a rocket ship into space.
Or they get pelted with baseballs.
Yes. This character, first of all, I wanted to say, Kodaka obviously thought the players playing the game, they always think they're safe, right? Because I'm the player character. I can't die. Then there's no story. We're going to get them and show them that they're wrong, right?
Uh-huh.
But then he also went a step further because this is where his misogyny kicks in. He's like, what if we make that character a woman? That way, when she dies, people will be extra sad because people are more sad when women die. Mm-hmm. Again, misogynist, right?
Yeah.
But it sends a much more troubling message that really undercuts what he was going for. Because that effect of being surprised your main character died didn't work the moment you put a woman in there. Mm-hmm. Because if it was a male character that died and you had to play as the female character for the rest of the game, then it might have been a surprise. Whoa, the past few games where I played as this male generic character, he didn't die. I thought I was safe, and I wasn't. Now I have to play as the woman who was sidelined, but is now the real hero, right?
Mm-hmm. That would have been cool. Instead,
what happens is this. Oh, I'm playing as a woman now. I wonder if I will even survive this. I wonder if Kodaka is the misogynist enough to kill off the woman in brutal ways.
Kodaka.
Yes. So then when the twist happens and they kill her off and you play as the guy instead, you don't go, oh my goodness, I never saw that coming. You respond with, oh, figures.
Yep.
It's specifically anticlimactic. It does the exact opposite of what he intended.
Yeah, not only that, but the later on in the game just makes it worse because first of all, that whole thing was completely out of her character from what we knew.
Oh, right, because in the Danganronpa series, you have to commit a crime to get executed. Mm-hmm. So they make your character commit a crime outside of your control. Normally, you control your character in every way, but they just basically insert her crime outside of your control, and you're not able to just not do it.
And it's just very out of character for her, too. Like, it feels like they just forced her to do it to kill her off so that they could get to their real protagonist.
Exactly. And this is literally the anti-feminist, because you promoted your game and sold it on the idea that there was a female playable character, and you snatched that away. Like, we didn't already have enough male characters. In fact, the only other Danganronpa game that had a female character was the spin-off that was called Despair Girls.
And by the way, it gets even worse because later on you find out that she didn't even actually commit the crime she was executed for.
Yeah, there was a twist that found out that she was actually innocent and had been wrongfully executed. Although she still intended to murder someone, she hadn't been successful.
Exactly.
So not only do you compromised her character and cheated your own rules. They desecrate her character as much as, oh, that's terrible. I hate it. It's so misogynistic. And now let me get to the execution, right?
Yeah.
When a character murders, they get an execution. So even though she didn't actually murder, she got executed anyway because bleep the rules.
Yeah, they convicted her.
Like I said, they gave her the most egregious and violent, I dare say, execution of all. They killed her by hanging. Hanging. Sure, she was on a piano or whatever, fantasy, but it was death by hanging.
And when you look at the other executions, like, none of them are that torturous.
No, it's just the women, really, and specifically Kaede, that character.
Yeah, when you think about the other executions, like even in the first game, like Celeste, she was hit by the car. She technically died instantly. Yeah, the fire was under her, so she might have been burning up.
That would probably be the other most realistic one I would talk about, the car accident, how she got killed by a car. But yeah, it wasn't torturous. In fact, it was commonplace. That was the whole point. Hanging is not commonplace, right? But throughout history, it has been. On women, especially. Yep. I mean, obviously more like African Americans in the American South and through slavery and whatnot, sure. But with women, it brings up like images of like witch burnings to me. Yeah. Or I mean, witch trials. Because the execution method was usually hanging, not burning.
Yeah, and it's just awful. Like, I guess Leon waited a while to die when he got hit with all those baseballs, but...
What?
Like the other...
What's your point?
I was saying the other executions aren't really as torturous.
Exactly. And then there's another female character in the same game named Mew. Now, her character is an example, I think, of what Kaede could have been. And that it's a female character who you can tell the author wants you to hate them. The author is trying to drag them down, just like Kaede, right? Although he wanted you to like Kaede so you'd cry when she died. Kadaka wants you to hate Mew and wrote her character in a way that thought it would make her very dislikable. She's very vulgar and she's on the offensive with anyone she meets.
Yeah.
But if you push back, she immediately gives in and becomes kind of like submissive, right? It seems like this was made to like essentially make her a dog that barks and has no bite, right? But I feel like Mew is a powerful character despite that. And that fans, this is a good thing about fans. Like, I know we talk about the fans falling for these fallible gods, but I'm not against fandom itself.
Yeah.
Fans can actually be very empowering. And I think they are with Mew because Mew is actually one of the most top favorite Danganronpa characters of all time.
Yeah.
There was a poll and Kadaka was surprised about that because he had made her just to kill her off.
Yeah. And also Mew ends up being one of the most important characters in the game later on.
I mean, honestly, I interpret her strange, admittedly, character as simply being a woman that likes vulgar things and likes things rough and has a rough attitude, but is ultimately kind of a facade for a more submissive interior. That really she's scared and kind of puts up a front, and that these two conflicting sides of her personality are both real, and that it makes her a deeper character because she has multiple sides of her. It's like someone tried to write a 2-note character, and I'm just like, well, that's better than the 1-note characters you've written in the past.
Yeah, and later on, she ends up being the one that created the
Technology that makes them survive.
that lets them escape.
And no character, because when she eventually dies, she gets murdered again in a very brutal way, right? She gets choked to death with toilet paper. I wouldn't say this is as brutal or realistic as hanging. To me, this is just insulting.
Yeah,
with
because
toilet paper.
but you can tell that they specifically had her strangled to death because people are going to say that she liked it.
Exactly, because as you could probably guess from her personality, she was into BDSM. So like, oh, well, what if we strangled her and it'd be like she asked for it? Meanwhile, you're doing it with toilet paper. So you're literally calling her garbage. You're calling her toilet.
Also, this was something we really noticed during her trial. Every other character that gets killed, even if they weren't that nice a person or no one really liked it, gets some sympathy from almost all of the other characters.
And you got none.
Except Mew. Everyone hated on Mew during her trial.
And it was very unrealistic. And this is including her robotic boyfriend, the one that she had a romantic and intimate relationship with.
Yeah, like everyone said something bad about Mew during the trial, and it really stood out because none of the other characters were badmouth after they got murdered.
So anyway, this is all to say, Kadaka is an egregious piece of crap.
Yeah.
And yet people believe in him. We watched a playthrough of this guy named Nico B, who was playing V3. That's how we first experienced the game. And he talked about Kadaka constantly. That's where we first heard the name before we start looking it up and found out, oh, this isn't just him. This is a thing. Yeah. People care about this guy. People talk about his interpretations and what he's going for. And I'm just like, I don't give a crap because it's obvious his interpretations are messed up.
Yep.
And I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't have the capacity to be a good writer. His past work proves that. But his past work also had probably people checking and balancing him. And he doesn't have that anymore. That's what these gods do. When they have total creative control, it's like a dictatorship with art. And they ruin it. They poison it. They put their own toxic masculinity into it.
All right, we should really keep going.
Okay, but I'm just saying this guy is egregious. I could go on and on about this guy.
Yeah, I know. Especially since we care and we love the characters in Danganronpa so much because most of them are good characters.
I should also mention in V3, though, the one Pacific Islander that they had, who was supposed to be, the diversity for the game, they made into a crazy cult leader. So again, also racist.
Yep. All right, let's keep going. So we can't talk about this without mentioning J.K. Rowling. To be fair, most of the fandom has sort of divorced themselves from listening to her and agreeing with her views.
We also know this isn't strictly a video game and that Harry Potter spans throughout media.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Starting with books.
Yeah. But anyway, I was just saying that, yeah, we technically know that a lot of people don't listen to J.K. Rowling anymore.
But I forgot to mention something about Kadaka.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but in fact, it was just news within the past year or so that Kadaka left the company Spike Chunsoft due to creative differences. And he's going to start his own studio. And everyone was reporting on this like, oh my goodness, well, I hope that they make up amicably, and I hope that his new studio makes some great games. His past games have been amazing, so I can't wait to see what he'll make, right? My first response upon seeing this story was, good riddance! Spike Chunsoft still holds the Danganronpa and Zero Escape IP. It will be better off without you. I can't wait till the next Danganronpa game now.
And you know what actually makes me certain that the next one will be better and that we're better off without him?
What?
Because we heard some stuff about the next game he's making, and he's literally...
I don't remember anything about it.
Oh, I do. because he's literally going even younger than using high schoolers.
Which was already kind of problematic, but they at least made them over 18.
And now he's using, like, middle schoolers, like 12-year-olds.
Great.
For the next game.
Oh, I should also mention Kadaka used incest just to make you hate someone more.
Oh, yeah.
He would just throw it in there just to be like, isn't this darker and more interesting? I'm not going to go too deep into that, though. Let's go to Harry Potter now. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. But anyway, yeah, we know that J.K. Rowling is pretty much no one listens to her anymore. But she did try.
You'd like to believe that, but she still has quite a following.
I guess.
But a lot of people do realize her for the terrible person she is.
Yeah. She is the Dumbledore is gay person.
Yeah, which
do we even
barely
really
gay characters? Our episode on that.
Yeah, do we even really need to talk about this anymore?
Yeah, we brought it up a few times, but just suffice it to say, in case you haven't heard, basically J.K. Rowling is sideline faux progressive. She's not willing to actually make characters have a diverse orientation or anything else and be progressive in her actual stories. She will actually do the very much the opposite, make everyone hetero and have no progressive content. And then she will stay after the fact that they were progressive or diverse all along.
Yeah, it's honestly a running joke on the internet now that she'll say, Lupin's werewolf disease was an analogy for AIDS and stuff like that.
Even though she's not willing to actually be part of it, she just wants the points afterwards. So she's a hypocrite. And, like we said, she said Dumbledore was gay, even though she didn't actually show any relationships, even when they did a Dumbledore prequel.
Yeah, honestly, they could have even, like, if she really wanted to be about Lupin's werewolf thing, she could have made Lupin gay, like, explicitly in the books, and that would have solidified it more, and it would have actually been diverse.
Right. So J.K. Rowling, though, for a long time, she was, I think, one of these infallible gods. In fact, you'll notice she is literally the only woman on the entire list, which makes her very different. And even though she was listened for a while, we now realize her for the fraud she is, right? But I can't help but worry that, isn't it weird that the only person we've mentioned so far on our list that people seem to have realized that she was a false goddess is the only one that was a woman?
You're right, actually. I didn't think about that. I did not notice that, but you're completely right.
I don't hear people talking about Kodaka the way we're talking about. I don't hear people talking about Blundell or Miyamoto the way we're talking about. Yeah. I only hear stuff in favor of them. But Rowling, there's at least a mixed response.
Yeah, wow.
But she definitely still thinks she's an infallible god because she still keeps putting it out there. I've seen some funny responses online, though.
Yeah.
One is, if there was a bus that ran over Harry Potter and killed him, J.K. Rowling would say that the bus was bi. And then I saw another one that said, J.K. Rowling should honestly just release a book called Who Wizards Be Bleeping. And I responded. I mean, I didn't respond to, like, in my mind, my reaction was, she actually really should. That would solve all the problems because you've written it down and you've actually contributed something to the LGBT community. Instead of just mouthing off and not actually putting pen to paper.
And you know what? There actually have been spin-off books from the Harry Potter series that were like, for example, like the textbooks, some of the most mentioned ones are actual books with notes written by the characters.
What?
Some of the most mentioned textbooks.
No, I heard what you said. How does this matter?
Oh, I was going to say, what she could do is write a book like that was written by one of the wizards that is just like about that, a diverse book.
I mean, she could do it in any one. She could do it in the main ones. She just doesn't.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going.
Okay, so far we spent most of the episode talking about the egregious examples, but there are lesser examples we want to talk about. People that aren't as problematic and people that maybe their words aren't as seen as godly as like Miyamoto, Kodaka, or Blundell, right? Mm-hmm. So let's go down this. You want to talk about the first one?
Todd Howard.
Yep. Fallout 4, well, Fallout, but mostly Fallout 4, and Elder Scrolls.
Yep. Do I even need to say anything else about Todd Howard?
He was actually a very short-lived one. Basically, as soon as Fallout 4 came out, his entire credibility was ruined.
Yeah.
People would frequently make fun of him, and even whatever credibility he kept was then lost after Fallout 76 came out.
Yeah, and also people, even back then, people used to joke constantly about him forcing people to buy different versions of Skyrim because they re-released Skyrim so much.
Right, but I think he kept his credibility after that because Fallout 4 was marketed towards an FPS audience, gun games.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
And so a lot of those people, even myself, weren't familiar with his crimes in Skyrim. All right, so we also have Ken Levine from BioShock.
Oh, yes.
So this is a more dated example because the company that made BioShock, Irrational Games, basically doesn't exist anymore.
That's weird. It really doesn't.
After BioShock Infinite took 5 years to come out and they didn't make nearly as much profits as they wanted because paying for 5 years worth of AAA development costs a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And I mean, seriously, unless they made the next Grand Theft Auto, they just weren't going to make enough money. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I like the BioShock series. I think all of the games are worth
great.
something. Some of them are better than others, but still, they're all great. Mm-hmm. After that, he closed the studio. Mm-hmm. Laid off hundreds of people. And his reason is he felt like he wanted to work with a smaller team.
Wow.
Now, it was probably a lie. It was probably financial reasons. But he could have just told the truth.
Yeah, he could have.
Because he shouldered the entire blame, saying that, oh, you fired them just because you wanted to work on a smaller team. You're a jerk. Though you just laid off 200 very talented people that could have been making the next great BioShock. Mm-hmm. Again, he was probably lying.
Yep.
You want to mention the next one?
Hideki Kamiya, Bayonetta.
Yeah, we had a Bayonetta episode. That was fun. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we talked about how problematic the creator was.
He said Bayonetta was his wife. So yeah, there's not much else to say about that.
And Bayonetta is a complicated character with how she's simultaneously empowering but also panders to the male gaze. Mm-hmm. We talked in that episode about ways that could have been done to fix that.
Yeah.
But when you know that the creator's intentions, it almost feels like the feminism was an accident.
Yeah, to be honest.
Yeah. It's kind of like the same way with Elsa from Frozen.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because she was supposed to be some villain, but then the songwriter changed everything. Mm-hmm. The guy who wrote, or I don't know who it was, that wrote the music for Let It Go, the moment they saw that, they're like, okay, she's a hero now. or an anti-hero, really?
Really?
Yeah.
I thought it was based on the story of the Snow Princess.
The Ice Queen.
The Ice Queen.
Yeah, Elsa was going to be the Ice Queen, who is just an evil villain.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I don't know how the original story goes.
But she's just an evil caricature. But when they made that script and how empowering it was, like, no, Elsa is going to be the hero now, the tragic hero. Oh,
that's awesome. I like that.
So they were kind of feminist by mistake. Mm-hmm. And I think Frozen was really the first of the progressive era of Disney movies. Mm-hmm. And that's just kind of my interpretation. Because now there's so many multicultural Disney movies that Frozen kind of looks very white snowy in comparison.
Yep.
If you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. All right, Gabe Newell.
Of Valve.
Yeah. There's lots of memes telling people to pray to Gabe Newell.
Yeah, and this is mostly for Steam. Mm-hmm. Basically, he's the guy in charge of the company that runs the best game distributions platform ever. Uh-huh. And Steam is always that weird thing where obviously monopoly and capitalism and copyright and all that stuff is bad, right? We talked about much of that. Mm-hmm. Yet people love Steam. And I think it's just a testament of how good Steam is.
Yeah, honestly, I agree. And a part of the reason why why there's been so much anger lately over our developers doing this really dumb thing where they make their games Epic Store exclusive
Or
for
like
certain,
EA or Disney or whatever.
yeah, is because people love Steam so much that they hate it when other developers only put their games on another launcher. And they hate it because Steam is so good and those other launchers are so lacking and awful that they just is like, why not admit that you have the inferior product and let us enjoy the game on the platform that we want to enjoy it on? You know?
You want to know why I think that Steam is given kind of such an exception to when consumers usually hate monopolies?
Why?
I think it's because of Steam's enormous silence and usability and care towards the consumer. Now, that might sound contradictory. Not everyone loves Steam, right? Mm-hmm. But I think Steam is really the Title II of game distribution platforms, the closest that we have. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, like electricity is under Title II protections by the American government, right? Uh-huh. Which means that it's considered a resource to survive, and no company can have a monopoly. Instead, the government makes sure that we all get electricity through, governmental means and whatnot, right? Mm-hmm. Many people want the internet to be done the same way, and the FCC of the American government has ensured that we will not get that because they are currently led by a lobbyist for Verizon.
I don't even want to talk about that.
Right, okay, but I think it's important because the internet in America is terrible because they make it that way.
I know.
They know we don't have a choice.
I know.
Steam being almost a monopoly could do that. Steam could be just so terrible that we want to overthrow them and break Steam up and have competition, right? Mm-hmm. But Gabe Newell's actually kind of smart. They knew that would happen if they ever did that. So to keep their basically a monopoly, they decided, okay, you know what, guys? What if our product was actually pretty good?
That's funny.
It'd be like a monopoly that took over the ISPs of the United States internet, but then decided to give such great service no one ever wanted to break them up.
That's funny.
It's honestly genius.
Yeah, honestly, I think that if the ISPs gave such great service and stuff, we wouldn't want to break them up. But we do because they give us crappy service and we're mad about it.
Yeah, and people like their games being all given through the same platform. Mm-hmm. They treat it like an extension of the internet or electricity that, oh, well, this is just the place you go to for games. You go to the aquifers, you go to the lakes to get your games, like a water resource, right? Mm-hmm. The unfortunate thing is that monopolies are bad.
Yeah.
And even a company with the best of intentions will still be bad as a monopoly. They can charge higher prices, give less to developers, because there's no incentive for them not to do it. Mm-hmm. As long as they can get away with it, as long as they know public opinion won't turn against them, they'll do it. Mm-hmm. Steam itself has had many controversies from banning games, especially mature ones.
Only when people get mad about them.
Well,
Otherwise,
no.
They usually don't do anything.
Well, okay, yeah, stuff goes under the radar, but Steam makes it kind of a default habit to ban mature games.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And then they undo it if enough people get outraged about it, because Steam's entire method of operating is don't get people mad at you. That's all they care about. Because they're making money just from people using them. That revenue stream is guaranteed. That's why they don't make games anymore. Mm-hmm. As long as they just don't get people mad, they'll be fine. Mm-hmm. The problem is that other companies have noticed this security flaw, this insecurity flaw within Steam, and companies like Epic are trying to make their own alternatives.
Yeah,
I think the reason it's so controversial and scary because really competition isn't necessarily a bad thing. Part of me wants to say, go Epic, go Disney, but come on, those companies. Do you really think it's going to be better? Are we going to end up with a situation of like a proper competitive marketplace? Or are we going to end up with a situation that's like ISPs right now, where everyone has their own crappy ISP that does DRM and whatnot? Because if Steam gets a lot of competitors and Steam can't go the way it's been going, what if Steam decides, okay, well, you know what? All of our competition is doing these manipulative practices. We have to do the same thing to keep up. Mm-hmm. And then next thing you know, you don't have any option. That's why people are angry. That's why people are scared. They're not, I think maybe people haven't thought about this as much as I have in this particular way. Because I would say that maybe those people that are angry about it are kind of projecting and don't know the real reason they're angry. It's not that the Epic or Disney making their own service is bad. It's that it's those companies making that service. And do we really trust those companies?
We don't.
Even if we say we'll stick with Steam, we are now effectively losing content because Steam's monopoly is shrinking. Which would be a good thing, except for the hands that it's going to. That's
Because
why
it's trying to be another monopoly. It's saying you can only get these games here and nowhere else. So, we're forcing you to do it.
And I mean, capitalism doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
It's not like them being in competition is going to give a better service for everyone. Because what it will do is mean that it's like streaming. This is a big thing with streaming lately, with all the different companies trying to get into it and Netflix losing its power. I feel like a lot of this could be said for the same for Netflix.
Oh, yeah. I agree with you there.
Because now the end user, instead, you have to have the Epic Store, the Disney Store, the Steam Store, the Nintendo Store, right? And you have to pay for services on all of them or whatnot. You end up having to okay, I want to play this game. Which launcher do I have to use? It's a worse experience to the consumer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And that's what people are afraid of losing. Steam is not Title II. Steam is not regulated by the government. And so Steam can get away with that power. They've simply chosen to try not to. And so we've been able to kind of pretend that it is regulated, pretend that it is Title II. But it's not. And other companies, they're noticing that. They're taking advantage of it.
It's very upsetting.
Let's mention a few more names.
All right. George Lucas.
Oh,
Star Wars.
I think we talked about him. Yeah, we gave Star Wars as a specific example in Death of the Author.
Yeah.
But George Lucas made some great original Star Wars movies, apparently, so I'm told. And
You've never watched them.
And
I haven't watched them either.
But then when he got complete creative control, he ran into the ground with the prequels and eventually sold the franchise off.
Yeah.
So he was kind of one of those gods, but he's retired now.
Yep. Next, Stephen Moffat.
Oh, Stephen Moffat. Probably the worst thing to ever happen to Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Again, when he wrote original stories very early on, he was great. But you put him in charge and he plummets the thing in the ground.
Exactly. Because as soon as he's gone, it's so amazing now.
Yeah. He refused to have a female doctor. The first thing his replacement does, 13th Doctor's a woman now.
Yep.
And you know why he said that he didn't want to have a female doctor?
Oh my God, I don't want to know.
He said that this show is not just for progressive people, but also for Brexit voters. Shout out to H-Bomber Guy YouTube channel. We enjoy that posted that clip. He also added on to that, wow, what a strange connection to draw a line between Brexit voters and people who want a female doctor, huh?
Yeah, that was a good one.
But yeah, he turned Doctor Who into a fun show, into a show all about how amazing the Doctor is. We also wanted to add two more things. Trolls. Some authors know that this is a thing that happens, and so they actively try to troll people.
Yep.
Andrew Hussey from Homestuck is a big one. In fact, he would go out of his way to give you the most obnoxious answers to questions you would ask.
Yeah, I know. He used to have a form spring where he would do that.
Yeah, like one person was like, there was this character that went God tier and we never got to solve what he became. What did he become? And he goes, he became the gentleman of urine. Obviously, that's not a serious answer, but he would take advantage of that. He would troll people who were expecting a god to give them all the answers they needed. Another person who did this was Jimmy Zielinski,
Oh, yeah.
who was the former lead of Call of Duty Zombies before the next guy came and ruined it. And I know I've already said what I had to say about Call of Duty Zombies, but Jimmy at least knew this. During his era, you didn't have that problem because he would just give you troll answers. It's amazing how some people believed him anyway.
Or not amazing, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah. But it was a lot easier back then when someone's purposefully giving you ridiculous answers and cryptic answers that mean nothing.
Yep.
All right. So all in all, what do you think the lesson is here, Kira?
You need to be critical of your favorite media and its authors.
Fair enough. Simple enough.
Be critical.
All right. Well, this has been Game Theorem.
I'm Kira.
I'm Kyle. Check out our Patreon or email or gametheorems@gmail.com or give us some feedback.
Oh, hey, we got shouted out on Culture Kings podcast.
Oh, that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool.
On our Twitter account.
Yeah.
All right. Well, bye.
Bye.